Tune into Murder in America with your host, Ethan Trace. All new episodes every Thursday night at 8 p.m. only on Binge Crime TV.
They put my hands behind my back, they put handcuffs on me, and they said, yo, we got him. She had got arrested in a stolen van. She had outstanding warrants and she was on probation. They took her to the back, and that's when they started threatening her. They told her she would have a baby in jail, so she agreed to get on the stand and testify. And all she had to do was point at me. When she pointed at me, that was enough. There was a guy named Anthony Davis, and the day that they called him to take the stand, the DA informed the judge that his witness ran off. He was in Allway. We were supposed to take the stand, but he ran off. I wrote lawyers for 23 years, asking a lawyer to take my case. Somebody just take my case pro bono, because I didn't have the money. If somebody would just take my case and help me prove my innocence, I would even let you represent me on the civil case, because I know for a fact that I was innocent. No lawyers would even take my case. She knew that my cousin and her brother and the guy who actually did it was involved. She said, Jonathan, I know you're gonna be upset with me, but I know that you had nothing to do with the murder, and I actually know who did it.
So, tell us about what happened to Crystal.
Crystal, that's my son's mother. She got hit by the train. She survived. She had a civil case against New York Transit. Yeah, she passed away, so my son, he had lost his mother, but then my son, he was finally, because that's her only child, he was awarded the money that she had won on the civil case.
So, Jonathan, with Crystal, there was a case and a settlement, and your son, being her son as well, is the one who received the settlement.
Yes, he was the one that received the settlement. And basically, me and Crystal used to always talk about it. Like, when she get her settlement money, she always promised me that she was going to help me get out of prison, because she said my son really needed me. And she said, Jonathan, I know you didn't do it, and I'm going to make sure that, I help you get out of jail, because your son needs you out here. But unfortunately, she passed away. But my son was awarded the money that she would have received, because that was her only child. And what happened was, I was in solitary confinement again, and this was in like 2012, around 2012, when I got out in 2013 out of solitary confinement. And when I got on the phone, I spoke to a friend of mine, and he was telling me, he said, yo, I know you're getting ready to come home soon. And I was like, what you talking about? He said, yo, your son finally got that money. I said, what money? He said, that lawsuit, I guess, with his mother passing away. I was like, what? So I talked to my mother, and she confirmed it, that my son had got the money. And I told her to tell him I need to talk to him. That was like an afternoon I talked to her. That night, I went outside to recreation, and I spoke with my son. And I told him, I heard you got your money. And the first thing I said to him, I said, listen, I'm not asking you to give me anything. I'm just asking you to help me. I said, you know for a fact that I'm in prison for something I didn't do, because he was 5 years old when I went to prison. And I said, all I'm asking you is that you help me. And at this time, he's like 28. I was like, I'm just asking you, man, that you help me get out of prison. That's all I'm asking, and I'll give your money back when I prove my innocence. And he told me, he said, yo, Pops, he said, I got you, Dad. Don't even worry about it, how much you need. And I hollered at these people, these investigators that I really felt that could help me. And I reached out to them, and they told me that they needed, it was like $10,000 down to start the investigation. And the young lady that I was dealing with at the time, he gave her $50,000 for me.
And so this circles back to earlier when we were talking about nobody would take your case or even look at your file because you had no money. So now that you had money, now you have the upper hand to get somebody to look at your case and try to prove your innocence.
Yes, and that's what I needed. That's what I needed from the beginning. So when this money was given to me, the young lady I was dealing with, she told me that he gave her $50,000, and I told her, I said, listen, I need you to give Bob and Kim, these are the attorneys. She's the one who located the attorneys for me. And I said, I really believe in them, and she believed in them, and I gave them $10,000. And then as they was investigating my case, they investigated my case. I hired them. What I like to point out, I hired them April the 8th, 2013, I hired them. And about 6 months later, they told me I ran out of money. So I ran out of money. Yeah, maybe 4 months later, they said I ran out of money. And my son was gonna give me more money. But my investigators, after reading my paperwork, They came to visit me one day and they told me, they said, listen, Mr. Fleming, we ran out of money, but this is what we're going to do. They said, listen, we believe in your innocence. And they said, we're going to represent you, and we're going to just build you. And when we prove your innocence and you win your civil case, you'll just pay us then. He said, that's how much we believe in your innocence after going through all of the paperwork and everything. We believe that you're innocent. And they continued working on my case after I ran out of money.
Up until then, there was really nobody coming out of prison. You didn't hear about people being exonerated, and there really wasn't that many. It was very, very, very rare. So attorneys, they take cases they think they can win. And somebody who is incarcerated for almost 25 years, you're going to have, how are you going to have witnesses? How are you going to get information from them? Are they going to remember anything? Are they dead? Coincidentally, we found 200 people to talk to. And we were just amazed that everybody was still alive. And they would first say, what is this about? We would tell them about Jonathan, and they knew him by Hook. And they'd say, first thing they'd say is, Hook? He's still in prison? He's still alive? And we were like, yeah, he's still in and he's still alive. And that's what we're trying to do, is to get him out. Then they go, he didn't do this, right? Every single one of them, except for one witness, said the same thing. So the difficulty of this case, it was extremely difficult. We took this case, reading the transcripts, going through the fact that witness one recanted, and that wasn't enough to get him out. That wasn't enough at sentencing, and it wasn't enough to get him out. We were hoping that the new conviction review unit would take that into consideration. They met with us and they said, that's not enough. And we said, well, you tell us what's enough. And they said, newly discovered evidence. So here we leave and we start thinking, and we're going back through all the characters and trying to figure out, now, how are we going to find newly discovered evidence? So during the investigation, it's extremely difficult because we don't know if we're going to find it. And it really wears on you. And you've got Jonathan calling every day, what's new, what's going on, what'd you find? And, there were a lot of days where it was like, well, nothing's happened yet. And as we kept poking and prodding to get to certain people, now, maybe we were successful with a witness, but to get to that witness, we may have interviewed 20, 30, 40 people to get to that witness. We don't know if we're going to find newly discovered evidence. We don't know. But we were already committed to Jonathan that we would do our absolute best. And I promised his mother that I would do my absolute best. She made me promise her, even if she died, that I would continue to work on her son's case. I made that promise. And that's not a promise I make.
And then what happened was, in the month of November 2013, my investigators told me, they said, we're going to go to South Carolina. We're going to go talk to your cousin. I said, what? They said, we're going to go talk to your cousin, the one that had the car, because your uncle even said that he gave him the car. So they said, we're going to Kingstree, South Carolina, and go talk to your cousin. They went to Kingstree, South Carolina. It was like the first week in November 2013. And I never forget, I was talking to them that day, and they said, we out here now. And they said they seen him. They said they was actually interviewing him right then, talking to him. They went to his house, he was there, but he was saying that he didn't have nothing to do with it. He'd had nothing to do with it for like 4 hours. And maybe around that 5th hour, he finally confessed, and he told them that my cousin never did that. He told them that I didn't do it, that he had my car. He told them who did it. He told them that He didn't know that the guy was gonna do it. The guy just jumped in the car, but he gave them an affidavit that I didn't do it, and he know who did it. So my investigators asked him, would you be willing to give us an affidavit, and we need you to fly to New York and come and talk to the district attorney's office and let them know this? And he told them yes. So they told him that they want him to fly to New York and come to the district attorney's office. He did do that. He went, talked to them, he gave them an affidavit. 5 days after that, they told me to pack up. They told me, you going down to Rikers Island? I said, Rikers Island? They said, yeah, you're going to court. You're going to the DA's office. They took me to the DA's office, and when they took me to the DA's office, I went in there with my two investigators and my attorney, and they came in there. It was the investigators for the district attorney. It was the district attorney who they passed the case to, and she sat down. She sat right next to me, and she said, how you doing, Mr. Fleming? I said, how you doing? She opened up her folder, and when she opened up the folder, she passed me a piece of paper. She asked me, she said, you know what that is? I said, no. But it was a piece of paper, but it was all those years ago. And she said, that's a phone bill. She said that was in the detective's file, showing that you paid your phone bill in Florida on this date. And then she passed me a letter. And I gave that to my lawyers, and then she gave me a letter. And she said, you know what that letter is? I said, no. She said, this is a letter that the detectives from Orlando, Florida sent to the detectives in New York City, which states that they investigated the people at the hotel. And they confirmed that you was in Florida with your family, but this letter was never turned over neither. It was in the detective's file. And she said, we're gonna investigate this and we're gonna get back to you. At that moment, I was so happy. I went back to Rikers Island and I got on the phone. I even told my family and them, I said, yo, I'm coming home. But what happened was December came, Christmas time came, New Year's came, and then I'll never forget, it was January 10th. They told me to pack up, that they would send me back upstate. And that destroyed me. I was like, why am I still in jail with all this information? The month of February came, the month of March came, and then April the 7th, I was on the phone and the officer came upstairs and he told me, Mr. Fleming, go lock in your cell. I said, what's up? He said, yo, just go lock in your cell. I went and locked in my cell. And my counselor came to my cell on April the 7th. And he told me, she told me, she said, Jonathan, come here. And I said, what's up? She said, I just talked to your investigators. They told me that you're going to court tomorrow on the 8th. And remember I told you I hired them investigators on the 8th of April 8th, 2013? Yes. She said, you're going to court tomorrow, which was on the 8th of 14. She said, they said that you're going to court tomorrow and you're going in front of a judge at 2 o'clock. And they said, your case is going to be dismissed. That was the happiest day of my life. I broke down, I cried. And they was asking me she said, yo, it's going to be all right. And I cried, I couldn't believe it. And I cried all night because I suffered for 24 and a half years for something I didn't do. And I just felt, I said, you know what, this nightmare is over because I know I didn't do it. And at this time, my mom, she was sick. Because when I went to prison, I was 27. My mother at this time, she was 48 when I went to prison. So I was 52 and I was 3 weeks away from my birthday. So my mother was 74 years old now. And I just wanted to make sure I could get out before I would lose my moms. And I got out. I went to court on April the 8th. And my lawyer, he brought me some clothes. He asked me what size I weigh. They came and picked me up that morning. They put me on a flight and they took me to court. And when I went to court, I went up in the room. I was getting dressed. And at this time, my mother came into the room. They said, you got somebody want to visit you. Before I went to go see the judge. And it was my mom's. And we hugged, we cried. And she kept saying, she said, yo, it's over. And I cried, and she said, it's over. And then I went, at 2 o'clock came, I went in front of the court, I went into the courtroom. I went into the courtroom, my whole family was there. And I didn't know the news people was gonna be there. And they dismissed my case. And the first thing I did, I went, after hugging my lawyers and them, I went and I hugged my moms. And here I am today. And I got 15 months with her. 15 months later, she passed away, but I did get that time with my moms.
Sounds like it was a very special time. I take it you took every day, every second you could.
Yeah. 15, all that time for something I didn't do.
Now, while you were in prison, was the level of prison you were in? Did they allow visitors, or were you denied any communication from anybody from the outside?
No, I received visitors from my, not even friends. A lot of people just turned their back on me. But there was some people that was there for me. My first wife was there for me. She did a lot of time with me. My second wife, I got married 3 times, and a lot of times it was for the wrong reasons because we was getting conjugal business and stuff. But that's what really kept me going. And my boys, I missed out helping them raise my kids. I went to prison. My son, he was 9 years old when I went to prison. And he wound up going to prison, my 8th year in prison, for a murder that he did commit. He did 18 years. And he came home a year after me. But the main thing is that I just wanted to get home to see my moms, and she hung on. 15 months later, I lost my moms. And what I would like to also, people that need to know, when I got arrested, District Attorney, his name was Charles Hines. That was in 1990. In 2024, he lost the election, and a black district attorney came into office, did the investigation and released me because he had the information in November, and he knew he was leaving office, but he didn't release me. And people have no idea how that should feel, because you know what? The district attorney knew I was innocent, and he did the right thing as soon as he got in office. And when I lost my mother, something that never happened before, that district attorney came to my mother's funeral, and he even spoke and told everybody how he was so happy that he was out, that he was able to help me get out and get them 15 months with my mother. And then 15 months after I lost my mother, he passed away from cancer.
I'm speechless. Like, I can imagine all the emotions. I think.
Can I get some tissue?
Absolutely, my man. And declare, we all crying. We all crying.
I was crying.
We won't even do a welcome back. We'll just keep this part of. Okay.
Everything's fine. Good.
All right. Okay. Okay. So, Binge Crime TV, Jonathan Fleming, Part 6, Camera 1.
And I laid up all them years for something I didn't do, and I missed out on the opportunity to raise my kids. And that's something that bothers me every day, because I don't even have a good relationship with my kids. And I'm not the only one that suffered. My mother, she only had no other kids. I was the only child, and I was gone from her for all those years. So I'm not the only one that suffered. She suffered as well, because she knew that her son was innocent. And all those years, she knew I was innocent. And I missed out on all them years with my moms. And you have nobody know how I feel, how much I suffer. They may see me smiling and laughing on the outside, but they don't know the pain that I go through. They don't know what I've seen. And nobody know what it's like doing 24 and a half years in prison for something you didn't even do. Nobody.
So, Jonathan, obviously, black man being wrongfully accused of something he didn't do, obviously you're not the first.
I know I'm not.
This happened in 1990 when you finally went to prison, and you got out 24 years and 7 months later. You are now a free man. And obviously, one thing that especially I see in my line of work too is what we want to do is help make the world a better place than how we found it when we got here. Have you been able to use your story as an activist to want to help other young black men who were wrongfully accused and help them get their freedom as well? Have you been an advocate for the community? In what ways are you doing it, if you are?
When I first came home, it was something that I was doing. You know, I was going to prisons, I was going to churches, I was going to schools, and I was sharing my story because it's something that I do truly love to do. And I got off track, and you know, like I came home, I seen money that I never seen. Nobody ever showed me how to manage money and stuff like that.
When people go into prison at a certain age, especially young people, they stay at that developmental stage. So when he came out, he's still like a 26-year-old. He didn't have the ability or the opportunity through any type of quote-unquote rehabilitation, because that's not really what they do. They just kind of just stick you in there, and you don't have a lot of opportunity to grow outside in the real world. You're locked in a bubble.
And, you know, I had a little fallback, which, you know what I'm saying, I'm not ashamed to talk about it. I made a mistake during COVID time. during COVID time, I had a trucking company. They was giving out forgiveness loans and stuff.
The PPP loans?
Yes, for failed businesses. And I had someone to come to me, which I didn't know I was doing anything wrong. And they told me that, due to the fact my company failed, I had an LLC. I could get some money for my company. And he told me all I had to do was get at this guy, give him the information and everything. And I gave him information based off of my trucking company, and it was a legit company. But come to find out, the guy was doing some underhand stuff, swindling people and stuff like that, and getting money from them. And I got caught up. I got accused of some fraud stuff, but I didn't know I was doing anything wrong, and I didn't. But at the end of the day, I wound up having to go back to prison for 12 months. But that's not something I'm proud of. I made a mistake, but I didn't know that I was doing something wrong at that time, and that's the God honest truth.
So they're mind locked. When they come out, it's a whole different world. Jonathan was amazed by how different everything was. The buildings were taller. The city was bigger. He didn't know how to wash his hands on an automatic sink. So you can't expect someone who's been in for 24 and a half years to just be, right on schedule developmentally as the rest of us. So he gets this money and people come out of the woodwork, and he wants to trust and he wants to have a social life and be loved. And of course he wants all those things. Unfortunately, it was not the right people to be around, but he didn't have that ability. He didn't have that discernment to discern the nuances, to pick up on nuances from people, to stay away from them. And that comes from being incarcerated for all those years.
I was under the impression that this is the money that they're giving out, and they gave me the money, but they told me it was fraud. And the guy who did it, he's in prison doing numerous of years. And there was a lot of us got caught up doing it because the money that they gave us. And it's not something that I'm proud of. And some people may see this interview today and be like, you know what, but maybe he gave it his hands called for because of what he did. Nobody deserved to do 24 and a half years in prison for something he didn't do. I made mistakes, but I paid for my time for them 12 months, and I took accountability for my actions. But at the end of the day, nobody know what I've been through. And my mother, she suffered just like I did. Her only child in prison for 24 and a half years. She was 48 years old when I went to prison. When I came home, she was in her 70s and she was sick.
If you could have give one final message to everybody, your story, Jonathan, what would it be? What would you want people to take away after all this for your interview?
I would just like to say, dealing with this prison, with these wrongful convictions, the lawyers, they need to understand, if someone reach out to you and tell you that they innocent, y'all need to really take a hard look at these cases and just see, does it deserve to be investigated? Because there's a lot of other men in prison like myself that's in prison for something they didn't do, and they don't have the money. The only reason my case got investigated, it took my son to lose his mother to a tragic accident to give me the money. And if it wasn't for that, I'd probably be in prison right now today. So this is going out to you lawyers. Y'all need to really start looking at some of these cases where people tell you that they innocent, because you do have a lot of innocent men behind bars. And if y'all actually would do your homework and you would look and you review these cases.
There's a lot of defense attorneys who have this way of thinking that, wrongful convictions are terrible. At the same time, each one gives us an opportunity to learn something, learn how the prosecutors railroaded somebody. And we're getting very good at this.
I was the second person that he let out when he came in office in January 2014. He let me out in April. He had let one guy out before me. It was a white guy named David Ranto. I was the second guy that he released while he was in office. And I would also like to say he was in office about 30-something months. And he started a unit called the Brooklyn Integrity Unit, investigating actual innocent cases. And before he died, he was in office for 30-something months. And I would like to say I was the second person he let out. And before he passed away, he exonerated about 13 or 14 more people by the time he was in office. So he was in office, I think, about maybe 3 years, and he released about 15 actual innocent people. So these cases need to be investigated. If somebody tell you that they innocent, because they may be innocent. That's all I would like to say.
Well, there you have it, Jonathan Fleming's story. A powerful tale. I hope everybody listens and takes something away from this. There's a lot of innocent people out there, and not just young black men, young black women, people of all races, ages. Please take this story to heart. We can all learn something from this. We all need to be better as human beings. People like Jonathan, who are innocent and never committed the crime he was accused of, suffer for no reason, and we need to change and be better going forward. Thank you all for tuning in.